The diplomatic incident. The Nexus station orbited Earth like a gleaming silver wheel, its 8 massive spokes connecting the outer ring to the central hub. Judge Ilara Osoi stood at the panoramic viewport in her chambers, watching Earth rotate slowly below. After 15 years serving in the colonial judiciary, she had earned her position here, administering justice in humanity's most prestigious outpost. Her neural implant chimed, displaying the day's docket across her field of vision. 23 cases, mostly minor infractions involving the station's 50,000 residents. The morning proceeded as usual: smuggling charges, property disputes, and the occasional public disturbance. Judge Osei's reputation for strict adherence to colonial law was well established throughout the system. By midday, she had processed 16 cases with her characteristic efficiency when Security Officer Padel escorted in a woman charged with unauthorized access to a restricted area. The woman was tall with deep brown skin and close-cropped hair, dressed in simple civilian attire. "Name?" Judge Osei asked, not looking up from her tablet. "Maya Harlow," the woman replied calmly. Judge Osei scanned the charges. "Ms. Harlow, you're charged with trespassing in Section 7B, a restricted diplomatic zone. Security footage confirms your unauthorized presence for approximately 17 minutes at 300 hours. How do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor," Harlow responded. "I had legitimate business there." Judge Osei finally looked up, studying the woman. There was something peculiar about her demeanor, too confident for someone facing serious charges. Section 7B houses the Arcturian diplomatic delegation. What legitimate business could a civilian possibly have there at 3 in the morning? "I was invited by Sub-Envoy Terland to discuss cultural exchange initiatives," Harlow said. "I have the proper authorization, though it appears it wasn't properly logged in the station's security database." Judge Osei's eyes narrowed. Officer Patel verified no such authorization exists. The standard fine for this infraction is 5,000 credits or 30 days station service. "Your Honor," Harlow began, but Osei cut her off with a raised hand. "The fine is assessed." "Next case, Officer Patel." "Judge Osei," Harlow's voice took on a new authority. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding that requires immediate rectification." Something in her tone made Judge Osei pause. "Explain." "I'm Policy Advisor Maya Harlow, Earth Diplomatic Court. Clearance Alpha 9. She touched her wrist, and a holographic identification materialized above her palm. "I was conducting authorized diplomatic business by direct request of Ambassador Chen." The courtroom fell silent. Officer Patel looked uncomfortable. Judge Osei blinked twice, accessing the secure diplomatic roster through her neural implant. Maya Harlow's credentials appeared, confirming everything she had just said. Judge Osei's face remained impassive, though inwardly she felt a flash of embarrassment. "My apologies, Advisor Harlow. The charges are dismissed." She paused. "Though I'm curious why you didn't identify yourself immediately." Harlow's expression remained neutral. "Sometimes it's valuable to observe how justice is administered to those without high-level clearance, Your Honor." Before Osei could respond, her neural implant chimed with an urgent alert. Ambassador Chen himself was requesting her presence in the diplomatic sector. "Court is adjourned for 1 hour," she announced, rising from the bench. 30 minutes later, Judge Osei found herself in a secure conference room with Ambassador Chen, Advisor Harlow, and 2 high-ranking military officers. The atmosphere was tense. "Judge Osei," Ambassador Chen began without preamble, "what I'm about to share is classified at the highest level. Advisor Harlow's presence in the Arcturian section was part of an ongoing investigation. Advisor Harlow activated a holographic display showing surveillance footage. 3 days ago, we detected unusual energy signatures emanating from the Arcturian quarters. Analysis suggested they were scanning our defensive systems." "The Arcturians are allies," Judge Osei said, confused. "Officially, yes," General Rivera interjected. "But intelligence suggests certain factions within their government are pushing for expansion into territories currently protected by Earth's defensive perimeter. Harlow nodded. We believe Ambassador Keir Schall is gathering intelligence to assess our vulnerabilities. My presence there last night was to plant monitoring devices approved by Earth intelligence. Judge Osai frowned. This violates at least 7 provisions of the Alliance Treaty, which is precisely why we need absolute discretion, Ambassador Chen said firmly. And now, unfortunately, your courtroom episode has potentially compromised the operation. Osai felt a surge of indignation. With all due respect, Ambassador, I was simply performing my duties based on the information provided. And now we need you to perform different duties, Harlow said, her voice softer than before. Ambassador Keir Schall has requested a private meeting with you. Me? Why? He's claiming diplomatic harassment, says one of his aides was improperly detained last week. Ambassador Chen sighed. It's a pretext, obviously. He likely wants to assess what you know. Judge Osei straightened her back. I understand colonial law, Ambassador, not espionage. Which makes you perfect, Harlow said. Your reputation for rigid adherence to protocol is well known. The Arcturians won't suspect you're working with us. Judge Osei looked from face to face around the table, realizing she had little choice. What exactly do you want me to do? The meeting with Ambassador Keir Schall was scheduled for 1800 hours. The Arcturian was tall and slender, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the conference room lights. 4 arms were folded in what humans had learned was a gesture of formal respect, though Judge Osei knew enough about Arcturian physiology to recognize the subtle indicators of tension. Judge Osei, thank you for agreeing to this meeting, Keir Schall said, his translator converting his harmonic speech to standard English. I wish to discuss some concerns about treatment of my staff. Of course, Ambassador. The colonial judiciary takes all diplomatic concerns seriously. As they discussed the alleged mistreatment of his aide, Judge Osei carefully observed the ambassador, noting how his questions seemed designed to probe her knowledge of station security protocols. Following Harlow's coaching, she answered with precise technical details about judicial procedure while revealing nothing of operational significance. Your dedication to procedure is admirable, Keir Schall said eventually. Tell me, what did you make of the woman in your courtroom today? The one claiming diplomatic status. So that was it. Judge Osei maintained her composed expression. A minor administrative error, nothing more. Diplomatic personnel occasionally forget to update their security credentials. Keir Schall's upper arms unfolded slightly. Indeed, though one wonders why such personnel would be near our quarters during rest hours. I wouldn't know. The case was dismissed once her credentials were verified. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes before Keir Schall seemed satisfied. As they concluded, the ambassador made what appeared to be a casual remark. Judge Osei, your colonies on Proxima Centauri have been quite successful, I understand. Remarkable how humans thrive in such challenging environments. Something in his tone made her pause. We are an adaptable species, Ambassador. Indeed, one hopes such adaptability will serve you well in the coming cycles. After the meeting, Judge Osei found Advisor Harlow waiting in her chambers. He's fishing for information about our Proxima colonies, Osei said without preamble. Something about his tone suggested a threat. Harlow's expression darkened. Our intelligence was right. They're not just probing our defenses. They're targeting specific colonies. Why Proxima? Resources, Harlow said grimly. The rare minerals there are essential for constructing the new generation of faster-than-light drives. Whoever controls those resources controls expansion into the Sagittarius arm. Judge Osei paced her chambers. This is beyond my jurisdiction, Advisor Harlow. I'm a colonial judge, not a diplomat or intelligence operative. Actually, Harlow said, activating her datapad. According to Colonial Statute 427B, judges of your rank can convene interspecies tribunals when evidence suggests potential violations of treaty law. A tribunal, against a senior ambassador. Osei shook her head. That would cause a diplomatic crisis. We believe that's exactly what certain Arcturian factions want. A pretext for aggressive action. Harlow stepped closer. But what if we could expose the conspiracy before they're ready? Force the moderate Arcturian factions to address the radicals in their government. Judge Osei considered this. We would need irrefutable evidence. That's where we need your help, Harlow said. Your access to station systems, combined with your authority to investigate suspected treaty violations, gives us a legal pathway forward. You're asking me to stretch colonial law to its breaking point. I'm asking you to interpret it creatively to prevent a conflict that could cost millions of lives. Harlow's eyes were intense. Isn't that what justice is ultimately about? Judge Osei turned back to the viewport, watching Earth rotate below. 15 years enforcing the letter of the law had earned her this position, and now she was being asked to look beyond it to its spirit. What exactly are you proposing? She asked finally. A trap, Harlow replied, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. One that uses their expectations about human behavior against them. 2 days later, Judge Osei convened an emergency hearing regarding resource allocation for the station's environmental systems. Such hearings were common and beneath the notice of most diplomatic personnel. But Harlow had ensured that one specific detail would reach Arcturian ears. The environmental review would include inspection of all diplomatic quarters for compliance with station regulations. As expected, Ambassador Kier Shall objected strenuously, citing diplomatic immunity. The very public objection was exactly what they had anticipated. Ambassador, Judge Osei said calmly during the public hearing, standard environmental inspections are exempt from diplomatic immunity provisions as per Section 12 of the Alliance Treaty, which your government signed. These inspections are essential for station safety. The Arcturian skin rippled with what humans had learned indicated agitation. Judge Osei, I must protest. Our quarters contain sensitive materials. The inspection teams will respect all sealed diplomatic containers, Osei assured him. They are concerned only with environmental systems. What Ambassador Kier Shall didn't know was that the inspection teams had been specially equipped with sensors designed by Earth Intelligence to detect the specific frequency signatures of the scanning technology the Arcturians had been using. As the first phase of their plan unfolded, Judge Osei found herself working closely with advisor Harlow. Despite their rocky beginning, she was developing a grudging respect for the diplomat's strategic mind. Together, they were piecing together the evidence of a conspiracy that threatened not just Earth's colonies, but the stability of the entire alliance. The question now was whether they could gather enough evidence before the Arcturians realized they were being investigated, and what exactly Ambassador Kier Shall would do when cornered. The alliance. The inspection teams completed their sweep of the diplomatic quarters within 6 hours, maintaining the pretense of environmental compliance checks. Judge Ilara Osei monitored their progress from a secure operations room alongside advisor Maya Harlow and a team of technical specialists. They're finding exactly what we expected, Harlow said quietly, watching as data streamed in. Sophisticated scanning equipment hidden throughout their quarters, all pointed at critical station systems. Judge Osei frowned. Is this enough evidence for a tribunal? Not yet, Harlow said. This proves they were gathering intelligence, but not their intentions. We need to establish the connection to the Proxima colonies. One of the technicians called their attention to a screen. We've detected encrypted communications being transmitted from the ambassador's private quarters. Can you decode them? Osei asked. The technician shook his head. Not directly, but we can analyze the transmission pattern. They're sending data bursts every 3 hours, precisely when our defensive systems perform their automatic diagnostics. Harlow's eyes narrowed. They're mapping the patterns, looking for vulnerabilities. An alert flashed across the main screen. One of the inspection teams had discovered a concealed device in the central environmental duct connecting to the station's main computer core. That's not a scanner, the security chief said gravely. That's an infiltration module. It could provide backdoor access to our entire network. Judge O.C. straightened. That crosses the line from intelligence gathering to active sabotage. Under Colonial Statute 427B, I'm authorizing an immediate seizure of all unauthorized technology in the Arcturian diplomatic quarters. This will cause a diplomatic incident, Harlow warned. That was always inevitable, Osei replied. Better on our terms than theirs. Within minutes, security teams were moving through the Arcturian section, confiscating equipment and securing personnel. Ambassador Keir Shaw was escorted to a diplomatic containment area, technically not detention, but the distinction was largely semantic. This is an outrage. The ambassador's harmonic speech patterns were distorted by agitation, his translator struggling to keep pace. The Arcturian Federation will consider this an act of aggression. Judge Osei faced him calmly. Ambassador Keir Shaw, your diplomatic status remains in effect, but evidence of treaty violations has been discovered. An interspecies tribunal will be convened within 24 hours to review the evidence. You have no authority. Actually, Harlow interrupted, stepping forward. Under Section 27 of the Alliance Treaty, Judge Osei has full authority to convene a tribunal when evidence suggests actions that threaten station security. Kirschell's skin rippled violently. Policy Advisor Harlow. I should have recognized you that night. A clever deception, having the judge fine you to establish her ignorance of your true purpose. Not a deception, Ambassador, Osei said. Simply a fortuitous misunderstanding that led us here. As they left the containment area, Harlow turned to OC. He'll contact his government immediately. We need to solidify our position before they respond. How? By bringing in the other species representatives. This isn't just about Earth and the Arcturians. It affects the entire alliance. Over the next 12 hours, Judge O.C. and Advisor Harlow worked tirelessly. They briefed representatives from the Solarian Consensus and the Rigelian Confederation, showing them evidence of the Arcturian surveillance. Most concerning was data suggesting that Arcturian operatives had already infiltrated mining operations on Proxima Centauri. These minerals are vital to all our species' expansion efforts. The Rigelian delegate acknowledged, her bioluminescent tendrils pulsing with concern. An Arcturian monopoly would upset the balance of power throughout the sector. By the time the tribunal convened, representatives from all Alliance species were present. The station's largest conference chamber had been converted to accommodate the various environmental needs of the delegates, with specialized atmospheric bubbles for those requiring different air compositions. Judge Osei entered wearing her formal judicial robes, the weight of the moment evident in her deliberate movements. She had spent her career interpreting the law as written, but today she would need to embody its spirit. This tribunal is convened under Colonial Statute 427B and Section 27 of the Alliance Treaty. She began, her voice steady. Evidence has been presented suggesting that representatives of the Arcturian Federation have engaged in actions contrary to treaty obligations. Ambassador Kirschell, flanked by his aides, stood to object. This tribunal is illegitimate. I demand to speak with the Earth Ambassador. Ambassador Chen is present, Osei replied, gesturing to where Chen sat with other Earth officials. And as this matter concerns all Alliance species, representatives from the Solarian Consensus and Rigelian Confederation are also present. Advisor Harlow presented the evidence methodically, displaying the surveillance devices found in the Arcturian quarters, the infiltration module near the computer core, and analysis of the communication patterns with Arcturian ships. Most damning was information recovered from the ambassador's personal data storage. Detailed plans for a military operation called Resource Reclamation, targeting the human colonies on Proxima Centauri. The Proxima minerals belong to no single species, Harlow explained. When humans established colonies there 3 decades ago, the Alliance Treaty specifically designated those resources as shared assets to be extracted under cooperative agreements. The Solarian representative, a crystalline entity that communicated through light pulses, flashed a series of rapid patterns that their translator converted to speech. The evidence suggests a unilateral attempt to control resources designated for collaborative development. This violates the foundational principles of our alliance. Ambassador Kirschell's defense grew increasingly desperate. These are fabrications. Earth wants to maintain its colonial dominance and is using this tribunal to suppress Arcturian expansion. The evidence speaks for itself, Judge Osei replied calmly. However, this tribunal recognizes that actions by individual officials may not represent the position of the entire Arcturian government. This calculated statement had the intended effect. After a brief recess, during which Kirschell communicated with his government, the ambassador returned with a noticeably different demeanor. My government wishes to clarify that any plans for military action against alliance members were not sanctioned by the High Council, he said stiffly. Certain factions within our military and diplomatic corps may have acted independently. It was a transparent attempt to distance the Arcturian leadership from a failed operation, but it provided the opening Harlow had been waiting for. In the spirit of alliance cooperation, she said, Earth proposes a new framework for the Proxima mining operations, one that ensures equitable distribution of resources while addressing legitimate Arcturian concerns about access. Over the next several hours, representatives from all 4 species engaged in intense negotiations. Judge Osei observed as Harlow revealed the true depth of her diplomatic skills, guiding the discussions toward a solution that would preserve both peace and dignity for all parties. By the end of the day, a remarkable transformation had occurred. What began as a tribunal to address treaty violations had evolved into a collaborative session to strengthen the alliance. The result was the Proxima Accord, a new agreement establishing a joint operation for mining the vital minerals, with technology and personnel contributed by all 4 species. When Judge Osei finally adjourned the tribunal, the atmosphere in the chamber had changed dramatically. Where tension had dominated, there was now a cautious optimism. You did well, Judge, Ambassador Chen said privately afterward. Your reputation for strict adherence to the law made you the perfect person to bend it when necessary. Osei allowed herself a small smile. I didn't bend the law, Ambassador. I simply applied it with a broader understanding of its purpose. Later that evening, Judge Osei found Advisor Harlow at the main viewport, gazing at Earth below. The Arcturian government is recalling Ambassador Kirschell, Harlow said without turning. They're sending Envoy Muratel to oversee implementation of the Proxima Accord. She's known as a moderate, committed to alliance principles. A victory, then, Osei observed. For now, Harlow turned. Though I suspect we've only postponed the larger questions about how our species will share the galaxy. Judge Osei stood beside her, looking out at the stars beyond Earth. The law can only provide a framework. How we choose to live within it, that's the real challenge. Speaking of challenges, Harlow said with a hint of amusement, Ambassador Chen was impressed by our collaboration. He's proposed a permanent liaison position between the Judicial Court and Diplomatic Services, a new approach to interspecies justice. And who would fill this position? It would require someone with a deep understanding of colonial law, yet flexible enough to see beyond rigid interpretations when necessary. Harlow smiled. Any suggestions? Judge Osei considered the events of the past few days. She had spent 15 years applying the law as written, believing that consistency was the essence of justice. Now she understood that true justice required something more: wisdom to see the law's purpose, courage to interpret it appropriately, and the vision to use it not just to punish, but to build. I might know someone, she said finally, returning Harlow's smile, though she's rather strict about procedures. In my experience, Harlow replied, those who understand rules best also understand when they need to evolve. 1 month later, the first shipment of Proxima minerals arrived at Nexus Station under the new accord. Representatives from all 4 species gathered to commemorate the occasion. At the center of the celebration stood Judge Ilara Osei and Advisor Maya Harlow, architects of an alliance that had transformed a potential conflict into an unprecedented collaboration. as humans and aliens worked side by side, unloading the precious cargo that would fuel their collective expansion into the stars. Osai reflected on how an accidental meeting in her courtroom had changed the course of interstellar relations, proving once again that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or military might, but the capacity to forge connections and find solutions where none seemed possible. Retroclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.